Thanks for tuning in for today's guest speaker. We have Megan England from Ogallala Commons, who will be talking about entrepreneurship, future planning, exploration, as well as leadership. Megan, we thank you for being here with us today, and we will go ahead and let you take it away.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Amanda. It is super exciting to be here. Like she said, my name is Megan England. I'm a native of Baca County, Colorado, super small town part of the country. I currently live in Springfield, but I grew up in Campo, which is about 20 minutes from here. My fun fact that I always love to throw into these conversations is my graduating high school class had 6 students in it. So we were a fun time. I serve as a workforce and leadership development coordinator for a High Plains nonprofit called Ogallala Commons. And we'll talk more about them in a little bit, but essentially, we are really dedicated to helping communities in the region of the Ogallala Aquifer become more vibrant and sustainable. And we have worked with GSN for the last few years as partners, especially in our entrepreneurial work. So I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you all today and maybe share a little bit about my career experience and how I got where I am today, as well as the work that we do in entrepreneurship, leadership, figuring out careers, and things like that. So a little bit about OC. Like I said, our passion is to help develop leaders who help human and natural communities to thrive. We've been around since the 1990s, which is crazy to me that it's been that long. But we operate kind of all throughout this region that you can see on the map of the Great Plains and the Ogallala Aquifer region. We kind of are based around that water commonwealth. A lot of communities in that region are obviously very different, but one of the things that we all share is that geographic kind of aquifer reliance. And so we do a lot of work with that. We do also a lot of work in community internships and work experience. So since we began, we've done like 600 community internships benefiting more than 90 communities in 7 different states that we work in. And I will fully admit that I have drank the Kool-Aid. I've been an OC intern, and I'll tell you a little bit about my story there as well. But it definitely changed my life. So excited to share about that today. And then, of course, we also do a lot of work supporting and growing youth entrepreneurs. Our 3 core programs, we do workforce and leadership development, which is obviously why I'm here today. But we also do a lot of work with stewarding natural resources. Like I said, we're centered on the water and the Ogallala Aquifer, so we do a lot of work to preserve that. And then if you remember during the pandemic going to the grocery store and noticing that there were some things that were not on the shelves that normally were, that's important to us too. So we do a lot of work with rebuilding local food systems and making sure that people have access to local healthy foods. Amanda asked me to tell kind of my career story, and I feel like that's always like a really big question because like where do you even start? There are so many stops along the way. So I'll try to make it quick, but honestly, my story is really just the story of a bunch of educators who influenced my life and opened doors for me, and sometimes maybe even pushed me through those doors, kicking and screaming. I'm the daughter and the sister of educators, and I've said my whole life I would never, ever, ever be a teacher. That's way too hard. I could not hack it. That was just not something that I thought I would ever be good at. As a kindergartner, I had a teacher who told my parents I probably would never learn to read well if I read at all. But my parents, and again, a couple of teachers that deeply influenced my life, did not take that for the answer, and instead helped me develop a love for storytelling that has really kind of defined my life ever since. In middle school, I had a superintendent who saw something in me that I definitely did not see in myself. And she connected me with a nonprofit dedicated to helping High Plains communities like mine become more vibrant and sustainable, in part through entrepreneurship and work experience opportunities in kind of a low risk setting. And so through them, I got my very first dream paid internship in 8th grade in historic preservation, because that's how I thought I wanted to pursue my storytelling passion. Telling other people's stories through research and preservation. It was actually a super great experience. I got to spend the summer digitizing a series of love letters between a World War II soldier from my town and his British war bride. And they signed all of their letters with Frank Sinatra lyrics. It was the cutest thing you've ever seen. It was like a Hallmark movie. But what I realized during that internship, even though I loved what I was doing, it was not what I wanted to do for a career. I was not cut out to, like sit down and hide in a basement doing research somewhere and never see the light of day and speak to humans. Turns out I was a little more extroverted than I thought. So one of the things that I did during that internship, as kind of a side thing through some volunteerism that my supervisor asked me to do, was design a website, plan a community festival, and create a brand and social media presence for that festival. And that is where I found my passion and my voice. So through that same company, I joined an entrepreneurship fair, and it totally blew my mind that the adults in my community were willing to listen to me and hand out thousands of dollars of cold hard cash for the ideas of myself and my peers. And so that was kind of a super exciting turning point. I followed that with a couple more internships in different areas, kind of developing more of a sense of what I wanted to move forward with. And then my junior and senior year, I got to work with another educator that has been really influential in my life, though kind of a non-traditional educator. He's never taught in a classroom per se, but he was the director of that nonprofit. And he came and asked if I would be willing, as a high school student, to be the operations manager and intern coordinator for, as I'm sure you've guessed by this point, that same nonprofit, Ogallala Commons, which is how I paid my way through a couple of degrees in branding and design strategy, and later in leadership strategy, which really sounds like a fancy way to say I know what I'm doing, but emphasis on the sort of there, because despite the fact that I loved my college experience, and it was really important for what I wanted to do, I learned way more just through life experience and the people and organizations that I connected with throughout my career journey. So as a result of that experience and through my internships and entrepreneurship, even as much or more than my degrees, I had the opportunity right out of college to interview for and get hired at my dream job. I went into a career in public relations for higher education, and I did a lot of brand management and graphic design and communication strategy in a city about 8 hours from where I grew up. And it was super incredible. I was getting to do all the things I loved and I was good at, and I got to be part of our company gaining a national stage. It was literally kind of an overnight thing. One day I was a 21-year-old recent college grad from small town, middle of nowhere. And the next day, or as we say, middle of everywhere, the next day I was literally talking to the New York Times and producers at Fox News and CNN, and I got to meet the director of NASA and go to the Supreme Court and all these really cool things. Met presidential candidates, got to see the president a couple of times in person, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. I got to teach a few courses at the university. At one point, there was kind of a job offer for work in DC, and I was like, this is it. I am living my dreams. Oh my gosh. But I started to notice something as I was doing all of that. The people that I was meeting who were on the path that I wanted to be on, who I thought of as traditionally successful, a significant percentage of them were not actually super happy with their lives. Their mental health was trashed. Sometimes their physical health too. They were wildly stressed. They had almost no time to relax or to spend with the people that they cared about. And the further I moved up that trajectory, the more I realized I was becoming the same. My mental health was going down the drain. Every work crisis, and there were a lot of them, felt like a life or death situation. And I was spending more and more of my time at my desk or on my work phone at all hours of the day and night than I was with my support system, which was at that time mostly 8 hours away. So one day I had a little meltdown on the phone with one of my mentors, who incidentally was another educator. And she said two things to me. The first thing she said was, are the things that you're stressing about right now at work life or death things? And if not, stop assigning them life or death importance. And I was like, ooh, ouch, okay. And the second thing she said was, regardless of whether you choose to stay there and figure it out or come home, your home community still needs people with your skills and passions. And your influence here is maybe even outsized because of our small size. So coming home is not a failure if you choose to do that. We want you here, you're needed here, and you can have a really fulfilling life and career here. And that really echoed what I'd heard so many times way back when I was doing those internships and those e-fairs from the educators that had been important in my life. I had just kind of set that aside to gain some life experience and gotten maybe a little lost along the way. So I had a few more conversations with some other mentors, again, all educators in some way. And wouldn't you know, but a month later, I had accepted a position as an educator in the high school 20 minutes from where I grew up. And I fell in love with teaching 6th through 12th grade business and career skills, mostly because I had really great students and great coworkers. And the thing that got me out of bed every morning was that excitement of helping students figure out their passion and their future path. That's the thing that I love to do most. So I taught through the pandemic, and like I said, had incredible students and incredible coworkers. And most importantly, I was close to the people and the places that mattered most to me. I went back to working in emergency services, which I had done for, a long time before I went to college, and just had kind of put aside because I didn't have time to do that. So I knew that even though a lot of stressful things were still happening, what I was doing was important and worthwhile, and sometimes even like for real life or death. And I was doing it with and for people I loved in a place that cared about me. But still the fit was like not quite right, even though I loved what I was doing. So almost exactly 2 years ago, I got a text message from an old friend who was the director of that nonprofit, Ogallala Commons. And he and the deputy director invited me to dinner and offered me a job doing all the things I loved about teaching with almost none of the grading, which was one of the things that I did not love, and doing it all across my region. So here I am. I get to do this every day. I work with students across 8 states, helping them build their skills to enter the workforce, learn how to be entrepreneurs, gain real career experience through internships. And I get to do it in a community that needs me, a community where I can be involved in things like sitting on local boards, working as an EMT, serving at my church, helping at my farm, caring, for my older relatives and babysitting my nieces and nephews who live 2 minutes away from me instead of 8 hours away from me. And that has truly changed my life. My big dreams were great, and they led me to some incredible experiences. I would not exchange them for anything. But really, what was most valuable to me along the way to where I am now is all of those relationships and those people who influenced me. I've worked with some truly great bosses, worked with some who were maybe less great, but from all of them, regardless of whether they were good or maybe a little tough to work with, I learned really, really important things. And they've all spoken into my life in different ways that have changed me for the better. And honestly, I can't believe that I get now the chance to do that for even one other person. Like, that's the dream. Um, so what have I learned along the way? A lot of things through maybe the School of Hard Knocks, I suppose. But today I would love to share about 3 specific topics: workforce skills, leadership skills, and entrepreneurial skills. And I'll give you a little spoiler alert. They kind of cross-pollinate. So all of these things are valuable, whether you're not planning to be an entrepreneur, whether you are, whether you do have a traditional leadership role or want one, or whether maybe you just like want to go to work and have someone else be the traditional leader in that sense. So one of the questions we get all the time, one of the questions that I was asking when I was in the student's shoes was like, how do I prepare for the workforce in the best way possible? And really every single person that I talk to, and literally like we've done the research, every single answer comes down to some really simple things. The first one is just show up. Like if you just show up, you're already way ahead of a lot of other people in the world. The other thing is to ask questions. Every single time I talk to students, we talk about the power of asking good questions. It is totally okay if you don't know stuff, especially as a junior high or high school student. You're not expected to know everything in the world. But asking good questions is how you start to know things. And so figuring out how to ask good questions and who to ask those questions of is a hugely, hugely important skill for anyone entering the workforce. I always joke, my first like real job out of high school, out of college, I literally just like pulled a chair into my boss's office for like the first 2 weeks. And I was like, so here's the deal. I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm going to be asking you about 5 million questions. And I'm pretty sure I drove her nuts. But after that 2 weeks, I kind of knew what I was doing. And so I had to, ask a lot fewer questions and I could be a lot more independent. The next thing is just work hard. Like these sound so like stereotypical, but I promise you that these are the things when we ask people, this is the thing that we hear every single time. Show up, ask questions, work hard, and finally be honest. Be someone who is trustworthy. Every single employer that I've ever asked would rather have a reliable, teachable, hardworking, honest person who has no idea how to do the task than some kind of technical genius who isn't any of those other things. So that's not hard. Like those things are things that anybody can do. You don't have to be good at math. You don't have to be, like an excellent scientist to do those 4 things. So as you're entering the workforce, that's it. That's what the most important thing I can share with you from my experience is. So when we get to leadership, there's so much that we could talk about here. We could do this all day. So I mentioned that one of my degrees is in leadership, which is like a really arrogant thing to get. Like, excuse me, yes, now I have this little degree that says I know everything about leadership, which is not at all the case. What I actually did was spend 2 years learning that there's really so much I don't know. But I also learned to love studying what makes leadership work. And a lot of that just comes from observation. So I would love for you to think about some things in your life. First of all, a lot of times when I talk to students, they say like, oh, I'm not a leader. This is not me. I'm not like the captain of the team. I'm not like the best student in class. I promise you, there's someone in your life who thinks of you as a leader, someone in your life that you have influence over. Maybe that's someone on your athletic team. Maybe it's a younger sibling. Maybe it's, children that you are around, whether that's nieces or friends or cousins. Maybe you have a job or you participate in some kind of school club. I think you all probably have a friend who looks up to you in some way. So great news. Even when you don't feel like it, all of us are leadership material because there's someone in your life who looks up to you. I'd love for you to think for just a couple seconds about a leader that you personally know and admire, and think about their defining characteristics. What are those things, when you think about like, man, this person is a great leader? What are those things that make them a good leader? And then on the opposite end of that spectrum, I would love for you to think of a leader that you don't admire at all. Don't say it out loud. This is not story time, but think about the things about that leader that made them a little bit gritty or a little bit hard to handle. Like, why are they a tough person to work with? So, whatever you thought about, these characteristics are what leadership expert Daniel Goleman calls threshold characteristics. They're probably pretty good at getting you started in leadership and they can get your foot in the door. But if we take a step back and kind of like zoom out, a lot of them fall into three categories. And there's a great article in Forbes that kind of sums this up. They talk about the 3 C's of leadership. So when you think about those things in leadership that all like become really important, a lot of them can be summed up in one of these 3 categories. And they're, again, super, super simple. The first one is competent. It doesn't mean you have to be like a technical expert, but like, are you showing up and being willing to learn? Are you trying to work hard, doing the things that it takes to get good at the thing, even if you don't start out at being good at whatever the thing is? Do you work your best to be excellent? The second thing is, how committed are you? Are you here for the right reasons? Do you believe in what you're doing at some level? Do you show up? Do you work hard consistently? Or are you just like here to draw the paycheck and go home? Good leaders are competent and good leaders are committed. They're there for the right reasons. And then the third C of leadership is character. Do you live out the values you say that you have? The bottom line is, can you be trusted? Are you someone that when your employer says, when I leave the shop, to go take my family to the emergency room or to go on vacation or whatever it is, are you someone that can be trusted when maybe the going gets a little bit tougher? So if leadership is a house, we talk about these being threshold characteristics. Thresholds are things that like get you in the door, right? It's the thing at the door. So competency, character, and commitment are kind of the things that build the door into leadership. There's a lot of other skills that you can have to be a leader, but if you don't have these 3, you're probably not going to get very far into the door when it comes to leadership. So before we kind of move on from the leadership conversation, I wanted to say a couple more things from Daniel Goleman. In his studies and those of his peers, he says there's one additional X factor that takes leaders from good to really, really great. When you get to the top levels of leadership, you'll see that there are people with similar IQs and similar like technical skills, and really a lot of similar characteristics. But in the most financially and otherwise successful organizations, more than 90% of the time, the great leaders score incredibly high in something called emotional intelligence. And Goleman kind of breaks down that kind of big phrase into some more manageable things for us. And so we'll run through them really quickly. First of all, self-awareness. Excellent, amazing leaders know and understand their strengths and weaknesses, and they're aware of their values, and they think about how their actions affect other people. So they're self-aware. The next thing they are is self-regulating. I don't know if you have ever been in a situation where you just want to like punch something or like be a little violent, get a little upset. I think we've all been in a spot where that would be the case. We find ourselves wanting to do things that are maybe disruptive or unhealthy. Self-regulation is just impulse control. We recognize that we want to be upset and we are upset and we want to lash out, but we take that extra few seconds to just like bring it down a notch, and not, send that rage-inspiring email back when someone, emails us or sends us a text message that makes us really upset. Great leaders can self-regulate. The next thing is motivation. There are a lot of things that can motivate us to take action, but great leaders find ways to be internally motivated. So they get up in the morning just because they enjoy the sense of achievement, just for the sake of it. And that's kind of different for all of us. Different things motivate us. So what are those things that help you be motivated to get up in the morning, that are like internal to you? And then we have empathy, and that's just thinking about and understanding other people's emotional status. So like when we're having a bad day, it's super nice to get some grace from our teachers or our parents or our friends to be like, hey, I get you're having a bad day. How can I help you with that? Great leaders are the people in the room who say, hey, you know what? I can tell that Susan's having a really hard day today. So how can I be of assistance to her so that we can all get the job done together, without like sending any of us over the edge? And then finally, the thing that Goleman talks about as kind of wrapping things up is social skill. That doesn't mean you have to be like the least awkward person on the planet. I promise you, I would rank up there with like maybe some of the most awkward people on the planet. But when you're thinking about social skill, really the important things are just like letting people know that you care. So even if you don't like know exactly the right words to say, if you can express to people that you care about them, ask them questions about their lives, just work to connect with them. Great leaders are people who know that that's important and who work to make that happen. So kind of full circle moment on leadership. As you pursue growth, whether it's through school or an internship or entrepreneurship or really anywhere else in your life, I'd love for you to remind yourself that yes, you are leadership material, even when you don't feel like it, because I promise there is someone in your life who follows you. And since you're leadership material, think about how you can strengthen those threshold skills, that competency, that commitment, that character. Maybe that's through traditional education. Maybe that's through, building a relationship with somebody who has those skills that you're looking for. Or maybe that's just through like consistent practice. And then how can you build emotional intelligence to kind of take you to that next level of leadership? Or even if you don't choose to be a traditional leader, if you're working for someone else, how can you build those skills to be the best person in the workplace that you can be? How do you do that? That story is always a little bit different for each of us, but essentially I found that the best experience or the best teacher is experience. So observe leaders, practice, observe some more, practice, fail, mess up, I promise you will. Find leaders you know and leaders you don't, figure out what makes them work. Kind of cast a wide net of people that are like you, people that aren't like you. One of my favorite authors, Tim Keller, has this really great quote, and he says, when you listen to and read one thinker, you become a clone. 2 different thinkers, you become confused. 10 thinkers, you begin developing your own voice. And 200 or 300 thinkers, then you become wise. And so that's the same thing when it comes to leadership or to being a good employee or to being a good entrepreneur. Cast a wide net, look at all of the things, all of the people that are like you and are different than you, and pick out the things that are most helpful to you there. So that's kind of a long conversation about leadership, but it's kind of my soapbox. So there we are. And then when we get to entrepreneurship, as we're kind of closing here, TREP skills, entrepreneurship skills, aren't just for entrepreneurs either. Just like leadership skills aren't just for leaders, just like workforce skills can apply to all of the above. So there are lots of things when we think of entrepreneurs that come to mind, things like time management and growth mindset and resilience and creativity and adaptability and vision and perseverance and all of those things. And those are really great skills, but they're great skills for anybody to have, right? So we kind of narrow down in the work that we do a few highlights that are things that anybody can do, whether or not you choose to be an entrepreneur in the long run. First up, entrepreneurs participate in community because they recognize that if their community isn't strong, their business is not going to be as strong, and vice versa. Entrepreneurs utilize multiple perspectives. So they're not people that just like look at things from one issue and they're like, okay, this is the solution to the problem. They see multiple people's points of view because often there are a lot of different solutions to a problem, or a lot of different people looking at a problem that can see different elements that need to be solved. So entrepreneurs always try to look at multiple perspectives. I think, was it Da Vinci that says you have to look at something from 3 perspectives before you can create it? Entrepreneurs are comfortable with being uncomfortable. it can be risky to start your own business, to bring your own idea into fruition, whether that's financially risky or relationally risky or whatever it is. Sometimes you got to be comfortable being a little uncomfortable. You have to have the tough conversations. And that's a skill, again, that literally anyone can use, whether you are just starting out in the workforce and maybe there's like something happening and you have to go to your boss and like kind of have a tough conversation, or maybe you're a leader and you have to have a tough conversation with your employee. Being comfortable with being a little bit uncomfortable sometimes is a really great life skill to have. My boss says this one all the time, and I really like how he phrases it. Entrepreneurs build the barn and then the house. So basically what that means is just take care of the most important stuff, the thing that's going to make you sustainable first, and then worry about all of the like luxury side of, running your own business and hoping to be independently wealthy or whatever it is. If you're taking care of the thing that pays the bills and you're doing a good job at that and becoming sustainable, then you can worry about the things that are maybe a little less vital to your survival. So build the barn and then the house. And kind of along the same lines, entrepreneurs take care of pennies so dollars can take care of themselves. And this doesn't apply just in a financial sense. If you're taking care of your money on a small level, then I'm much more likely to see you successful at a larger level financially. But this goes just for like your daily stuff too. I can't remember what his name is. There's an admiral that gives a great speech on this from the Navy. But basically he says, if you want to win in the world, start by making your bed. So if you work really well at doing the little consistent things every day that like maybe aren't super fun, like doing the dishes or making your bed or like being faithful in stewarding small amounts of things, it's much more likely that those bigger things are going to come a little bit more easily. I've mentioned several times how important it is to build your network and your relationships and the team of people who support you. But another way to say that is that a lone ranger is a dead ranger, right? No entrepreneur has gotten to where they are just by themselves. Everybody has someone they look up to or they have learned from, or maybe they do that on the negative end. Maybe it's some kind of giant failure that they look to, but everybody has someone who has kind of been an influence in their life in some way. So find those people, that network that can help you along. And then on the opposite end, turn around and be that network for someone else. Someone is going to be looking up to you at some point, and that's a great opportunity to give back. And finally, again, not just specific to entrepreneurs, but entrepreneurs persist. They recognize that sometimes the first answer to the problem isn't the best answer. And so even when things are tough, when things get frustrating, they don't just throw up their hands and go home. They say like, hey, we're going to stick around. We're going to figure this out, even when it's hard, even when it's not fun, even when it's, midnight and I'm frustrated. We're going to stick around and figure it out. So in short, whether you're leading, whether you're prepping, whether you're getting into the workforce, a lot of these critical skills overlap. And so it's really important to build them right now when you are in kind of a low risk setting, you're in school, you have that kind of support system every day around you. You don't have to be great at math. You don't have to be great at school or public speaking or whatever it is. If you are, that's awesome. But whatever it is, you don't have to be perfect at everything to build a great career and a great life for yourself. Your community really needs who you are and what you're good at, because there's no one else in the world exactly like you who has your skills, which takes us to the big question of like, how do you figure that out? And everybody in the world, I promise, has asked you that question or has asked that question of themselves at some point. And the first thing I will say is that there are a lot of people who want to help you. The team at GSN, the team at OC, your teachers, there are people in the world who are really excited, who get up every day wanting to help you figure that out. And I'm one of them. So these are the rest of my teammates at OC. We are all those people who want to help you figure that out. So I'm going to take just a few minutes as we close to share kind of what we do related to helping answer that question. But in short, one of the best ways to figure out who you are is to just get some life experience. And my whole job is to help you do that in the lowest risk way possible. So at Ogallala Commons, we believe that there are 12, we call them the 12 key assets of the Commonwealth. every community in the world, whether it's here in Colorado, in the United States, somewhere far across the world, every community in the world has some combination of these 12 key assets of the Commonwealth. Some are going to be stronger than others, right? So like in the town where I grew up, we didn't have a hospital. So it would seem like our health asset wasn't very strong, right? But we actually did have like some really great healthcare options. And health isn't just like going to the hospital, right? Health is mental health, health is relationship health. It kind of combines a lot of things. We talk about education. A really obvious asset or thing of value in your community is a school. But schools aren't the only place where education happens. Today, education is happening on Zoom. Maybe education happens when you go to your family farm and your grandpa teaches you, how to do the branding, or you go into the store where you work and your boss teaches you about how to, use some machine. Education can happen in a lot of different venues. So all of these 12 things, education, health, leisure and recreation, history, sense of place, water cycle, arts and culture, wildlife and the natural world, soil and mineral cycle, food shed, renewable energy, and spirituality. All of those are in every single community. And one of the best ways to figure out kind of who you are and where you want to go in your career is to think about those things in your community. Sometimes I even encourage students to like go on a walk through their town and like take pictures of examples of each of those things just to kind of like physically like get it into their heads. And then those are 12 opportunity fields, right? So in each one of those things, we could just list off the top of our heads, a dozen careers in each one of those opportunity fields. So what I always tell students is to kind of look at those 12 things, think about them in the context of your community or in where you want to be, and think, all right, which of these things is the thing that like really speaks to my heart the most? And what are some career opportunities in that key area? They're called assets of the Commonwealth because they're things that we all have in common, right? Things that bring value to our community that we all share. So lots of opportunities there to start looking into career fields. When it comes to OC, how do you get experience in those 12 assets through us? We kind of break it down into kind of 4 tangible categories. We have something called an e-camp or an e-club. An e-camp is just a one-day camp that we host at your school. And it's basically for 6th through 8th graders, where we start out like, I don't even know what entrepreneurship is, and we end the day with a little business plan. The e-club is kind of a semester version of that for high school students. It happens online, and we have some mentoring that goes through with our team. E-fairs, you might know a little bit about those. We're getting ready to do one in partnership with GSN here in May. And those are like, if you've ever seen the show Shark Tank, it's like Shark Tank, but for students. And you have the chance to pitch your idea and win real cash money. We also have something called a workforce and leadership certificate. So typically it's like a semester class. Again, kind of like the e-club where you do it online and connect with our team. And then it closes with a 50-hour internship in your home community that's paid. And then we also have just like a straight up internship program. So you get 100 to 500 hours of paid work experience in your home community in some kind of industry that's interesting or relevant to where you think you want to go in your life. Like I said, I've been through these and it totally changed the trajectory of where I thought I wanted to go. I've never had an intern be like, this was a terrible idea. Even if they go into an internship and they're like, wow, this is not what I want to do. You've spent, 100 hours figuring that out and getting paid for it. Instead of, going and getting 6 years of education, paying for all of that, and then being like, oh, this is not my vibe. So internships are a really, really great way, whether you do one through OC or somewhere else, to get some life experience in a little bit lower risk situation. And they're becoming more and more of not just like a nice thing to have. They're becoming more and more of a critical thing to have as we get into the workforce. I know a lot of the jobs that my friends were applying for as I went through college, they're like, gosh, this is an entry-level job, but it says I need 3 years of experience. It's like, how the heck do I get that when I haven't even been in the workforce before? Internships is the way that you do that. We also have an e-fair coming up in December. So we do a virtual one every December. If you're interested in the Wiggins Fair, you can contact GSN and they will help you out there. But our virtual e-fair is the first week of December. And I'm happy to chat more about internships if you have questions. But this is just kind of a story of one of our recent interns. He said, this internship taught me more than just how professionals in my career path work. It provided me with mentors. I learned about self-presentation, personality, goal setting, and so much more. And I found a deeper relationship with a thriving member of my community who truly became more of a mentor than I ever expected. And we have lots of those stories. We had 60 interns last year, and most of them would echo something similar. So lots of opportunity to get some experience and get involved in your community. You can catch us on the web at Ogallala Commons on all of the social media platforms, Ogallala. I still have to say it out loud every time I spell it because that's just who I am as a person. Um, we have events kind of all over Eastern Colorado and the rest of the states that we work in, Colorado, Texas, Kansas, New Mexico. Or you can just reach out to me personally. I'd love to chat with you and talk through kind of what you're thinking about your life and career opportunities and future plans. So that's my story. Thank you so much to GSN for giving us some time to do that. And I would love to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you so much, Megan. That was amazing. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much. It was fun. We love doing this.